Jeff, it's always nice to be able to talk one genius to another because anybody that was long today on anything is a genius. So, I mean,
Yeah, what was a it was a banner day for sure.
it didn't matter what asset you had. It could be anything from Bitcoin to junk stock. I mean, stocks that had no business going up even went up today, as
Yeah.
EJ pointed out in a post today. Well,
Some
okay.
a lot more than others. Yeah.
Yes, some a lot more like, I don't know, Tesla, 8%. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to request of you to be the answer man today. I got a bunch of questions for you, kind of a disparate number of things to talk about, but these are all on my mind and you seem to be the guy. So are you ready?
Yeah. Do it.
Okay, here we go. All right, I'm going to start off with a pop fly. No, wait. I'm going to start with a fun one. I'm going to start with a fun one first. I've got the wrong one still. That's still not the one I wanted to start with. A hard one. That's what I'm going to start with, a hard one. There was a ceasefire in Israel today, and Hamas is going to return all the hostages. Do you think this was a long awaited result of the Biden State Department's hard work or the threat by Donald Trump that they better return the hostages by this Sunday? Go.
I mean, I think it's clearly uh, the new administration coming in. Of course, the existing administration has to lead in the negotiations. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's a team effort involved, and I'm sure there's things that have been happening, but I mean, the markets are just, I mean, they're all over the place trying to guess what this administration's going to do. You see front running of autonomy with Tesla. You see just a number of things. So you have markets front running, you have terrorists front running, and um, and that's what we want. We want them front. We want them running. Just period.
There you go. All right. Okay, here's a harder question. Maybe. Everything in me tells me that Cybertruck is eventually going to be the number one selling truck in the world. I even did a poll the other day asking the people answering the poll to talk about their friends who love trucks. What are their friends who are truck owners? Are people that really like trucks? What are they saying about CT? Almost 50% said their friends want one. So do you think I'm right? And it's going to be this massive seller eventually? And if so, what's happening with shipments now? What's going on with the truck?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that a majority of people that have been waiting for this thing are waiting for the lower price point. So what we had happened since 2019 when it was unveiled and there was these price points of, what were they, 40, 60 and
40,000.
yeah. So you've had a bout of inflation for sure. You've also had Tesla literally change the product in terms of whether it's material thicknesses, whether it's four-wheel steering. You had Tesla make meaningful changes to the product too. And by the way, I'm not saying everything that Tesla has done has been perfect. By the way, I mean there's been some real issues with the product. It's one of those things when it's a first of its kind, very unique form factor, lots of new technology, 48 volt, lots of new to the auto industry. You're going to have some startup issues for sure. But in terms of the sales, I don't think people understand this. And I'll go look this up again. But what I remember, basically in a given calendar year, there are about 300,000 vehicles over $100,000 that are sold in the United States, and about 100,000 of them are trucks. Because some of these trucks, these pickup trucks can be outfitted with, every bell and whistle, and they're pretty expensive. Some of the higher end Fords and Chevys and so forth. And so if 100,000 trucks over 100K basically are selling in a year, and Cybertruck sold 40,000 of them in its first year, I would say that's a pretty darn good year. So now we'll have to see the 2024 stats. I saw that. I mean, I'm quoting a prior year, but in these roundabout numbers, Tesla Cybertruck at basically an ASP of over $100,000, which it was for most of the year. I think it did. I think it sold a lot. To me, I was always kind of in this 50 to 60K range. It looks like it's coming in closer to 40. I was never in these like it's 80, it's 100K, like it's just going to be nonstop. I do think Tesla could almost take the foundation model and go wider and go global with it.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any modifications they have to do. It'd be great if they can just get that and get those out and get it to, beyond Mexico, beyond Canada, and get more countries in because you're going to just have a contingent of people in all these countries that are going to want to pick off and get, be the first to have it. But I think ultimately for the Cybertruck to drive to that next tier, next level of sales, you've really got to get the entry cost vehicle out there.
But in general, you've got one, you're thrilled with it.
Yes.
Your people that you're talking to, would that be the same thing that even truck owners and people who love trucks would like to have one if the price was right?
Yeah, I think everybody that, wanted one, was able to get one this year in the United States eventually. Again, they were, undersupplied for
Right.
more than half the year. But yeah, now people have them that wanted them. But yeah, now to me, it's about access, and pricing, and also getting more countries. That's the thing. We're one country. I mean, we're
Right.
one gigantic country in terms of spend, but there are so many other countries this thing could go to.
Okay, this one's kind of off. Well, it's kind of, yeah, I think it's still in the headline. So I consider this to be a fun one, but maybe an important one. Should Elon buy TikTok?
No,
No.
I yeah, to me, yeah, this is just again. I mean, you can think of some reasons, I'm sure, but I don't think you're getting the out. I don't think I think the deal wouldn't be good because what makes TikTok TikTok is the algorithm and how it knows what you want to see. Everybody has kind of developed these, vertical, being able to scroll through videos quickly. So I don't think it's that. I think it's the algorithm, and I don't think that's for sale. So if that's not for sale, what are you doing? And then you're going to pay some outsized number for it again, and then how is it gonna how would that be going forward? I mean, I can see advantages of it, being combined with X, but not enough. I mean, just another distraction.
Okay. All right. Here's a pop fly to short. Why did
Okay.
Tesla go up today?
I think it was the rates coming down precipitously. I think rates have been weighing on the name more than others. Now, the rates have moved up since November, in a straight line. So it's not like it's kept a firm lid on Tesla, but it has had an impact for sure. So I think rates would be the primary reason. The other thing is there's been a lot of good news come out over the last week, and the market itself has just been sitting on and kind of weighing it down. I mean, get a lot of, I mean, the number one auto analyst on the street has an $800 bull case on the name and they up their base case to 430, which is where we landed basically now. And then just a number of other upgrades, so there's been a lot of good news. The new Model Y, it looks like we're getting very close. They didn't formally announce uh, FSD in China, but that's getting close. It looks like there's some pretty big order numbers on the Model Y in China. So there's a number of reasons. And the more and more we look at the new Model Y, it looks like there's been a lot of things done to the product that could drive the cost down. Unification of components, especially in the chassis. It looks like there's been a number of things that could really drive the cost structure lower. It having being the number one selling vehicle in China, the BYD Quinn, the QIN vehicle, that starting price is $15,000, and the Model Y starting price they're all between $35,000 and $50,000. The Model Y is in China, and it outsold. It was the number one selling vehicle, and the next one down is less than half the price. So it tells you Tesla's really has something special here. Now, there's news that isn't so good in terms of year on year sales. That news wasn't as good, but I also think between what's going on in China, what's going on in the U.S. rates, you know, buying these purchases over $50,000 are going to be under pressure for a period of time until we get some relief.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I 100% agree with you on I think the good news was being held back. It was kind of shocking to me to see that good news day after day after day and no pop. But I think the overall sentiment was really, really good, coming off the elections. And then we had this kind of the the macro sentiment was dead for a week or so. Or maybe it was just profit taking, just it was just way out there too far. But anyway,
Yeah.
this
The FUD's strong too, Randy. The FUD's
yeah,
been strong.
yeah.
We had the SEC suing, in the final throes of the last few days. Let's sue Musk because we don't think he paid enough for TikTok. I know the lawsuit alleges that didn't disclose certain things at certain times, but in general, if you look at the output of the transaction, there's nobody on this planet in their right mind. That's so there's fudding, there's real, FUD there. And then there's still going back to this TikTok thing, this conversation of Elon's got to sell Tesla to fund anything. Well, no, he's got this thing called SpaceX, valued at $350 billion. He owns, I believe, 47%
Something.
of SpaceX outright, private. He owns it. So he's got a lot of options. XAI, he's self-funded XAI, a couple $1 billion, and the thing's probably going to do another round in in the first quarter, second quarter of this year at probably 75 to 100 billion. So he's number one, he's got capital elsewhere. Number two, he's got access. He can go out and raise capital if he needed. And the final thing, that to me, my number one reason I was responding, because I do think there are people on X fudding about this whole thing of, oh, he's going to sell. The other thing is, like, Musk is trying to increase his share of Tesla. He
Right.
made a gigantic deal about wanting to increase his share of Tesla for AI development for its future
Mhm.
and so forth. So why on earth would he be selling it to buy TikTok and be selling out of real world AI? That doesn't pass the common sense test. Again, I could be proven wrong in a couple weeks, and he's selling Tesla to do some sort of weird deal on TikTok, but it doesn't pass the common sense test. And the only final thing, the only, I guess, yeah, those are my points on that transaction. I don't see as, and the other final thing I was just going to say is, what's with the market and just social media reaction if Musk has to sell like even $100 million of stock or something to cover taxes or charity? The Mackenzie Bezos and Jeff Bezos sold $21
Billion.
billion of Amazon, and Amazon's going to its all-time high. And he is working, by the way, he is not retired. He is heavily in Amazon right now working on AI, Jeff
Yeah,
Bezos.
yeah.
So it's not like he's disconnected from the business. Him and his ex-wife sold 21 billion and the stock's just floating to its all-time high. So I actually think, yeah, it could be some of the way that he's selling the stock, and that's part of it. But I also think it's this volatility, options run, and I just think there's everybody's just talking about, just like, he sells anything he does. It's just under a huge. Zuck sold a couple billion too. Meta's at its, near its all-time high. So I just don't understand the noise around that.
Okay. By the way, I'm also in accord with you on that one. I think he could raise $40 billion in a weekend. And probably if he called you or me and we had a few extra 100,000 sitting around, we would say, sure, I'm in. So, um, I have a new theory to pass by you. Usually I pass them by Larry because, Larry always agrees with all my theories. So that's it.
Oh,
I don't know if you
pressure's on.
want, but yeah. Okay. So no, he never agrees with my theories. That's part of our
Yeah.
part of the love of relationship we have on that particular show. Anyway, my new theory is this one. Um, everybody's trying to determine when FSD is really ready to be unsupervised and therefore, robotaxi can go forward. The emphasis is always, I mean, and Elon has said, the emphasis is on miles between safety critical interruptions. But there are no points for FSD having superpowers. So by that, I mean this. Um, once FSD is unsupervised, I'm sorry, I skipped something. I only have 2 cameras. It has 8. Those 8 cameras are always on. It never blinks. It's never distracted. It has no failure to understand or misjudgments about what it's seeing. It has amazing depth perception, way better depth perception than I do, not even close. And it can make decisions about avoiding other vehicles I would never make. It has an amazing understanding of the dynamics of a situation. If an accident is about to happen, it can make better judgments than I can about the physics and about directionality and whatnot. And so I think it's going to avoid accidents or reduce the severity of accidents that I would have failed to avoid or I would have failed to minimize. And so therefore, I think that should count.
You mean just the system design of it, should count? Yeah, of course it should.
The superpower side should be a mitigation of the fact that it makes a few mistakes.
Um, yes, this whole thing is mired in at least I want to say outside the 4 walls of Tesla is just a complete like amateur hour S show, I'll just say. And there's Wall Street analysts that are trying to, make up their own regulatory requirements for something to be approved for full self-driving. And the root cause of the problem is what Elon is actually close to the White House for right now, which is we need a federal framework. Today, California has requirements, Texas has requirements, Florida, you can't design a system of this complexity and this far reaching. We don't buy and sell cars by states. We drive them across state lines. So therein lies one of the root cause of the problem, which is getting a federal regulatory framework. It's nice that somebody is close to the White House right now that can help maybe kick that off and then step back and maybe guide it from the outside that actually understands the architecture of what you described in terms of the Tesla system design. But this is mired in just absolute ignorance. This is not how fleets are managed. We don't when we're doing multi-million unit deployments. I'll speak for the smartphone, tablet, and wearable world. We are not going to Joe Schmo's tracker to go figure out how our product is performing. It's a data point. Sure, it can create it. I have nothing against people that create these things. I think it's smart. I think it's very entrepreneurial of them to do something like that. But as a viewer of it, as an audience member, you have to be able to separate signal and noise. And that, in terms of its statistical significance, is going to be high noise and very low signal. And so, yeah, we're just mired in not having a standard. So everybody wants to reach out and say, well, this robotaxi service, they say they perform like this because they wrote a quarterly letter. Well, that's not data. How is it measured? What's the standard it's measured to? You could never, ever ship a product with the way some of these conversations are being told. So we need a federal framework. It doesn't mean that companies can't progress and drive to some sort of solution, but we need that we need that framework, and nothing's gonna count really until that framework is out there, and it's proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that it is more safer than a human, quite frankly. And there are zero opportunities for things like hallucinations and things like that that could happen with AI, because it's when you step back and look at things over a year time frame and over many millions of miles, I think we're going to be able to step back and look, and I think it's going to be many times better than a human. But while we're getting to that point, if there's accident here, accident there, we have a society now that is click driven and focused on bad news. You have people betting against stocks. You have people betting against human beings. And you have all these different betting markets betting against various things or betting for things too. And we just live in a very toxic society as it relates. So we have to have that framework out there, and then we have to have the right communicate. This is one area though where I do see an opportunity with Tesla. I'm not going to say the words PR, but just the external communications for the launch of autonomous driving, I think is going to be very important to handhold the public along the way.
I like that. I like the way you said it, although I have no objection to the word PR since I've spent
Yeah,
most
I
of
don't
my
think so
career.
either. I
I
don't have
think
an objection either. I don't think it solves as many things as everyone thinks it solves. But I think in this case, this education of the population may be critical.
yeah, education, or you could also call it reputation management. So, I've done a lot of reputation management over the last 15 years for my clients. And most of the time that I'm doing reputation management, it's not because they've done something wrong. It's because somebody thinks they've done something wrong.
Yeah,
And so you're trying to manage the foible, the mistake by the press or the mistake by some person that's
yeah,
making accusations.
yeah.
I've had some doozies, by the way.
Hmm.
I had a, I had one. Never mind, it's too long of a story. All right, anyway,
Be a
so
whole show.
it would be a whole show. George Hotz of Comma says he thinks that Tesla robotaxis are still 5 years out. What do you think about George's point of view?
Well, I think he's welcome to it. I think he's informed. I think he understands the tech very well. What I don't think is easily understood, and I'm putting myself in this bucket, is how does the compute scale? And what I mean, I'm saying how quickly can Tesla bring up compute? I'm more thinking of like how does the performance scale as this compute is all out there? And I don't know the answer to that. So what I do know is Tesla's been able to now plot out and predict 12.1 to 12.5 to V13 and get, 10x, 100x, 1000x improvement. So I think Tesla knows, where this is going. So I don't pay a lot of attention to people just kind of like throwing something out there without having data behind it. And I strongly believe that Tesla has a tremendous data set between the hundreds of thousands of vehicles out there running this, the billions of miles they're capturing. I'm not saying all that data is good. By the way, I'm just saying that they have the most access to data and they have the most real-time information. And then they know the relative improvement that they're seeing. So I would lean more in on that. And this was proven, by the way, too, that we just had this example occur where if you let's put people to the side, people that say it's 10 years out, 5 years out, that's fine. Again, I have a lot of respect for George Hotz. I think he's brilliant. I think that's fine. Store it. I go back to this FSD tracker again. I have no problem with the tracker and I think it's brilliant that people create something like this. But all of a sudden now there's this realization and somebody put a post out and Elon said, yes, improvement's exponential. And Gary, posted about it. And even though the 12.5 data point that he posted was equivalent to the 13.2 data point posted, but everybody's looking at this data. But it's January 15th or 16th, whatever today, yeah, 15th.
50, yeah.
Tesla told you on October 24th that you were going to see 1000x improvement.
Right.
And the stock price was half of where it is today, literally half of where it is today. So when you're talking about alpha and I'm not saying just believe everything the company tells you and close your ears.
Right.
I'm saying buy a car, study scaling. If you're going to be a major investor in this company, you should own a car with FSD.
Right. Right.
You really should, because this is the future of the company. But if you can't study scaling laws and how they work, and then listen to what I put the transcript out in a post. They literally told you that and they're driving V13 at the We Robot event weeks before. They're telling you this. They're like, you're gonna see 1000x improvement, and sure enough, they print it. But now you have people waking up 3 months later. That is a lot of alpha loss, and this is why it's really important to not just be dependent on these single sources, and certainly these low quality, high noise, low signal data sources. I don't
Okay.
remember what your question was, by
It
the
was
way,
about
but
George Hotz, but you're fine. You did a great job.
yeah, my answer to that is look at the data, the scaling is going to tell that story. And I have no reason to not believe Tesla's data based on the fact that they told me they were getting to 1000x before they got to it. Why would I stop believing them right now?
Yeah.
And then believe somebody that threw something out there with no data behind it?
In three
Why would I do that?
and a 30-minute ride. Yeah. If we have a good earnings call, not something like that FSD is unsupervised, not a major piece of news, but just a good beat and a good call by Elon with good guidance, and the stock goes up to 650. If I had you on the show the next day, would you be able to justify the price?
I'd have to think through what they said on the call to answer your question. I'd have to feel like, what did they say on the call? So here's I think what would justify a good call. I do think a solid beat would be good. Like to me, I view that as kind of the backstop, and we had that in Q3. They actually beat EPS and they beat gross margins. So if you have a situation like that again, and then you have them talking bullish, I mean, the way they handled the Q3 call, if they handle this call like the Q3, so there's no reason to think like the world changed dramatically, like it went south in 90 days. There's actually no data that says that like the entire world changed and went south in 90 days. I keep going back to, I know Tesla said they had a shot at 515. They shipped 495. It's a couple days of production. People need to, like, that's not what this company is valued on. It just simply isn't. So if they have a solid beat, if they reaffirm unsupervised timing, which Elon in this CES interview said 90 days, said Q2.
Right.
If they reaffirm early second half unsupervised getting kicked off, if they reaffirm these lower cost vehicles are on track, which they did at this early December Deutsche Bank conference where Tesla IR was there. If they do all those things and they have a solid print, yeah, there's no reason unless there's something dire going on in like unless Trump is putting 300% tariffs on things that Tesla needs. I will point out a risk, and I've been pointing this out online incessantly. I don't get a lot of responses on it. I've been DMing as well. I don't know the solution for Megapack LFP production. I meaning if this is an if then because the tariffs are going up on those. I think in May of this year, the tariffs are going, at least as stated by the prior administration, I think going up to 25%. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But regardless, if there's rhetoric about anything Chinese battery related, just and I could see the Trump administration outside of Elon saying like anything EV related, including parts they put very large tariffs or the other thing that or if we keep following through with this AI chip ban that the Biden administration did in the last couple of days, there are signals right now from the CCP. There's two things that are coming. There could, two trains that could be literally colliding head on. The one train could be the tariff train from Trump and going 100%, 200% on LFP batteries. This becomes a real problem for Tesla. So I hope that they've been stockpiling them in December, January, and bringing in some sizable inventory. Maybe we'll see that on the earnings call. Or I hope they have a transition plan that's earlier than people think. Because the other train that's coming the other way is China may respond to these export restrictions or tariffs and say, fine, we're gonna put an export restriction on LFP so you can tariff it 100%. We're gonna say zero. We're not going to send it. We're not going to allow any cells to come. And we're not going to allow you to use any of the LFP IP, any of the tech in your own factories. I don't know how well you're going to be able to control some of this stuff. But the point is China could put export restrictions on LFP. And I think that puts Megapack in a little bit of a problem. Again, unless Tesla, this would be my number one question, by the way, for the
Okay.
earnings call, which is what's your plan for LFP for Megapacks?
So we do have Panasonic making their new factory coming on board in Kansas. I think it's in Kansas.
That's for that's not for LFP though.
But is there any chemistry issue with switching over to what Panasonic's going to be making?
I mean, that's a good question. There's going to be trade-offs, cycle life, other things between LFP and going back to a lithium ion, high nickel. Um, but I mean, I don't have all the different specs in front of me, but there could be issues. But that is one of the viable paths. I just don't know what it does from a cost perspective.
Sure, sure.
It doesn't sound like there's tremendous cost sensitivity with these, meaning like Tesla's been bringing down the price as they scaled and as LFP came down. But I'm sure if they had to come up a little bit, they could. You know, they're the back. These things are back ordered for years. So yeah, I don't think it's dire. It just I want to understand.
Gotcha.
It could be dire. It
Yeah.
could be. I would want to understand the transition plan from Tesla's perspective. If I were them, I would bring in a lot of inventory, quite frankly, and I would give myself the runway needed to either connect myself to 4680 or to back to some other interim solution. Or there are other countries that
Right.
are trying to bring up LFP. But again, that could get dicey with China putting export restrictions on.
Yeah. Okay. South Korea, for instance, Samsung definitely has some pretty good capability as well.
But not LFP. So yeah, LG's trying to bring it up. So yeah, LFP is a China thing primarily, but there are US sources that are coming up. They're just slower and low volume. There's a company in Tennessee called Envision AESC. They're coming up, but it's going to take some time. But if China puts some export restrictions on tech or IP, again, this could all get really dicey. So the battery world, I think there's some risks there. I mean, it's not all, I'm very bullish on Tesla in the name. Just there are some risks out there.
All right. Well, you kind of pre-ran my next question, but
Sorry.
I'm going to give you a second try. If Elon got on the call right now and he said he'd answer any Tesla question, any Tesla related, doesn't matter, and he'd be as honest as he could possibly be. You've already said one would be, what the heck's going on with batteries? So, but what else? What else is really top of mind right now that we don't know, that Elon does know, that you would, or probably knows, that would be, really, really at the top of your list?
Has he changed his position on licensing FSD? Because I think that conversation started unmitigated in terms of, yeah, somebody should like call us and pick this up and we'll start working with them. Then all of a sudden the conversation changed. Well, we want to work with somebody that's got a lot of volume. And again, people get confused by the word volume. BYD's achieving their volume with 35 EV SKUs. That's not what Tesla's talking about. Tesla wants some high volume SKUs. So, anyway, their work is not spread and it's not, it's not for, going across so many different SKUs and there's all that complexity with doing that. So my other question besides what are you doing with LFP? I'd want to know, oh, has he changed his position on licensing? And then I would also want to know, have you had a breakthrough on 4680 dry electrode? When is that in a production? That's a very big thing for Tesla.
It's interesting. You and I are both very, very interested in the whole battery thing, the 4680. Most people, for some reason, they're more interested in the finished products and stuff as opposed to the components. And to me, there was a guy years ago, I can't find the quote and I can't remember who said it, but he said, the guy who invents the next best battery, the next top battery, is going to be the richest man on the planet. And I've held on to that idea for like 40 years. And it just seems like Tesla is everything that Tesla does is battery driven. So it's kind of the core component that differentiates them, makes them who they are. And it just seems super important. And the 4680 not being at scale yet, or maybe not being at scale yet, is concerning. It's concerning.
Yeah,
Uh,
my other question, if I'm able to run it a little bit longer, I would ask him if the 500,000 to a million Optimus design is that locked now in his mind.
that's a good one. I like that one. Any chance that the Fed cuts rates on the 29th?
Well, those chances went up. I think what happened today was this stupidity around the Fed hiking. You said hiking or cutting? You said
Cutting,
cutting.
cutting on the 29th.
The stupidity around the Fed hiking rates, I think, came off the table with today's print, and I think that it, finally the bond market didn't react to the PPI print. That was cool.
Oh, I know.
It finally reacted to this. So yes, the chances have gone up, but it's probably lower, but not super low. I do think what's going to be different in about 5 days or so is there's going to be a noise level coming out of the White House that the Fed just hasn't heard in 4 years.
Any of us have
Yeah,
never heard.
and the new Treasury Secretary
Yeah,
is going through confirmation, I think, tomorrow. And it's going to be interesting because there is this whole commentary of like a shadow Fed of just having some other. This could be its whole show.
right,
The
right.
data sources, the and how the Fed works. To me, this whole thing could be automated. It seems like there's a huge opportunity for AI. I don't want to try to oversimplify it, but I think there's better access to high frequency data, and just having people running around grocery stores with a clipboard in 2025 doesn't seem to me like it's best in class for the biggest central bank in the world.
Yeah, you couldn't say it any better than that. All right, so I do think we will have chaos for the next 90 days. I've been using that word chaos advisedly. I don't think that Trump minds it at all. I don't think Elon minds it at all. I think Vivek is fine with chaos. Now that new Secretary Treasurer, he might like things a little more,
Yeah.
a little more straight up and down. But I think there's going to be so much hitting. So my out of that, I'm kind of curious where you think inflation goes. So the components that I'm looking at are reduced immigration, maybe even more going home than coming. Trump's tax reduction bill extended and probably more cuts. It'll be on the table. It might not get passed until June or July or August, but it'll be on the table and they'll be talking about it. The ERS, I love this, the External Revenue Service. This
Yeah.
is just brilliant. The ERS starts working on raising money through tariffs. And that, as you said, lots of possibilities of how that's going to be play out. Regulations are cut like crazy, like so many regulations cut. Government employees and contractors are cut way back. Procurement goes down drastically. What happens in 2025? What about 2026? How does all of that mess? I don't have a clue, quite frankly. 2025 could be anything. I think in 2020, this I'll just tell you, I think in 2026, inflation is no longer a consideration after all of this is done. But in 2025, what do you think happens?
Well, I think you want to see the 10-year retreat. Otherwise, you're going to have this perception that the bond markets believe the Fed has made a policy error. That would be a problem. That would be a problem for many rate sensitive stocks and just stocks overall because people are going to just I can get I I'm Trump's going to do this and rates are still high and I don't want to deal with all that. I just want 5%. I just want my 5%. I'll sit this out until everything settles out. I don't think we want that. I think we want the 10-year going back towards 4. I don't think it's the end of the world if it's a little bit above it. We just can't have it scorching up, for 30 days in a row and, 50 basis points here and there all the time. So we can't have that. So, yeah, volatility could be a big thing. But if the rates stay low, it looks like earnings should be good.
Mhm.
The job market is stable. So, yeah, this should be interesting to see. There's so many things on either side of the ledger of inflationary deflation. You brought up a lot of good examples, but I'd have to think that deregulation isn't itself is at is the kind of the tip of the spear or the highest order bit. And if that goes through and it moves through quickly, that could be highly deflationary because you're going to have people being able to do things that they haven't been able to do before, or have them be able to do them in a period of time that they haven't been able to do them before. You hear about California and the unfortunate wildfires. And they're talking about, I have an executive order for, accelerating this and doing that. Well, yeah, it's great. Um, but the deregulation could actually deliver projects sooner. So when you have this time, if you have this return on invested capital happening in an accelerated manner, well, that's going to positively drive things.
Yeah, actually, I'll recommend people watch a show that I just cut with Brian Wang. It'll be on Saturday. Although, if you really want to see it sooner, I think he'll post it on his Next Big Future tomorrow, probably, on the deregulation of nukes, of the nuclear regulatory commission, maybe even the elimination. But that the potential for lowering the cost of energy through nukes right now is amazing. And so I'll recommend
Yeah.
people catch that show. Okay, what do you call it? A speed round? Buy Greenland? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Merge with,
Minerals, supply lanes, a number of different reasons.
okay. Merge with Canada?
Probably not going to happen, but yeah.
You're good with it if it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Negotiate taking back the control of Panama?
The canal, yeah.
You think we should just pay them?
Um, y yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, good. Well, that was my three quickies. So that's so. Anything else on your mind right now that's really top of mind for you in the whole
No, I
world?
just think the way that this administration is departing is really unfortunate and
Oh,
really everybody talks about how the last administration ended. Yeah, nobody wanted to see the windows being broken in the Capitol and so forth, and who knows what ultimately happened that day, but it was unfortunate and not good. But some of the stuff that this administration is doing, whether it's lawfare, it's all different. It's just it's unbelievable. But I'm really looking forward to just kind of this common sense and really a different way of thinking about solving problems coming into the White House. I think it's great. I think getting people. I think he's got a very talented cabinet,
boy.
and I think having some people from either outside the Beltway or outside of the defense industry, I think is a good thing. But I can't overemphasize how hopeful I am for Doge. And just I heard that Mark Andreessen chat, and from just driving very large cost reductions in my past and my career, I don't think the public understands what's going to happen here. People think like things like Social Security and Medicare, these things are untouchable. They're not. What Doge is going to try to do is they're going to try to deliver the service, but take the underlying cost structure way down. And there's ways to do this. There's patented ways to look at these things, and there's know-how in the industry. And if you've been, especially like Elon has this understanding of these things, I think they're going to look at headcount. I think they're going to look at procurement. And when I say look at headcount, they're going to look at it in a way in terms of efficiency and productivity in a way that has never been looked at before. And when I say look at procurement, you're going to look at the bidding process. You're going to look at the multi-sourcing process. You're going to look at getting rid of single bid processes or no bid contracts. You're going to look at all these different levers and tools that one of the biggest procurement organizations in the world has, but never levers themselves to actually, and I would say never, but doesn't typically lever themselves. And that's how you get $600 ashtrays and whatever, $500 soap dispensers. That's how you get these things. And so there's so many different ways to slice this. And I'm really looking forward to that getting kicked off. I think that's going to be exciting.
I think, over my, 55 years of running businesses and when I'm looking at cutting, the number one thing, I hate to say it, but you look at personnel and there's always 10% that can go. Always.
Yeah.
I don't care what you've already cut. There's always another 10%
And
that
when was the last time the government even had a
ever. No. And then there's also what they call, zero-based budgeting. And
Yeah.
I don't care I don't care if you're defense, I don't care who you are. There's no increases this year. Forget it. Find a way. And people go, oh, but you can't cut defense, or you can't cut this, or you can't cut that. I'm like, of course you can. You
Yeah.
you 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 tell them that there's not going to be any increase. People find a way to get what has to get done. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not new. This is not new science. This is
Yeah.
FDA 101.
Yeah, and the fact that we don't know the contractor count, we don't
Yeah,
know. So there's some people that say they don't know the number of federal agencies.
right,
Is there a real confirmed, approved number
right.
of that? It just seems incredibly opportunistic, and that's our tax dollars. That's if you're in the upper tax bracket, this is close to 40% of your earnings is going into this thing, where you have people spending on things that you have no idea where it's ultimately going. And I go back to the kind of the California piece of it, highest taxes in the country, and their neighborhoods catch on fire, and there's not, I'm not trying to oversimplify this thing, but it doesn't feel like the government had everything ready to go and at its full force that it could have been. I'm
But
not an expert in
uh,
fire, uh, but it just seems like were gross opportunities to do more. Not saying that this thing wasn't ferocious and wouldn't have overtaken everything, but for the amount of taxes that get paid in California, man, it should be perfect. It should be flawless management of that, flawless management of crime. And so, yeah, I'm just looking forward to a better, more efficient. I don't mind paying taxes. I would love to see a more efficient use of the money.
yeah, you just set me up to do another promotion. So coming tonight at 7:45, Brian Wang and I have spent at least 100 hours between us over the last 7 days, taking a complete deep dive on what happened in the fire, but not just what happened, but what could be done to make sure it never happens again. And I mean, literally, even with the same wind factors, even with the same fire, everything exactly the same. And um, inexpensive things. And I'll tease with one: sprinklers on the roof with a sump pump in the pool saved multiple houses. The houses that didn't have it, they burned to the ground. That's a very simple one, but we have a list. We will start off with some information on Tesla in the beginning, but we'll spend most of the program talking about what we've come up with in that short time. Maybe we've got original and fun ideas. Maybe they're stupid ideas, but at least we have ideas.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff. So yeah, we're in accord on your last comments with regard to the incoming administration. What a time to be alive. This is going to be absolutely mind-bendingly interesting the next 90 days.
Look
I'll
forward to it.
enjoy sharing it with you over that time period. So, all right, Jeff. As always, happy to have you on board. So the numbers, they are stunning. Tesla ended up 8% up today. That turned out to be $31.86. And in the after hours is given back 61 cents of that. So with only 20 minutes to go for the real after hours. And then we get into the overnights. If you want to see what's happening in the overnights, of course, you can go to Robinhood. All right, let's go ahead. The Dow up 703, NASDAQ up 466, S&P up 107. In percentages, that would be 1.65 for the Dow, 2.45 for the NASDAQ, 1.83 for the S&P. What a day. And yes, of course, all of the Magnificent Seven were up. And yes, all but TDOC. I don't know why TDOC was down today, but all of the Cathie Wood stocks that I follow, all of them had a great day today. Obviously, as Jeff and I were just talking about, the bonds went in the right direction this time. We are up 0.4 of a basis point in the after hours, but they were down, I think, 12 basis points during the day. So we're at 4.657. That just seems like a lot compared to 4.8, but it's not. It needs to go down a lot more, but that's where we are right now, 4.657. We have got the 2-year up 0.8 of a basis point in the after hours. and the 1 month up 1.5. These shorts, for some reason, have been up a little more than the longs recently. Okay, so, but all good news in terms of the bond market. Oil had earlier, okay, so we're actually over $80 a barrel, $80.46 for Texas Intermediate, $82 for Brent. Wow. And natural gas up 27. Like I say, you pretty much any asset you own today, you are a genius. Gold up 640 in the pre-market, 27.24, inching towards the all-time high. Silver now at 31.60, inching towards the recent all-time high 34. Copper at $4.40, up 27.27 in the after hours. Must have been up earlier today as well. We've got the dollar a little weaker, but not really. And then we have Bitcoin up 3,173 today, 99,706. It was actually, yeah, close enough. And it was over 100,000 earlier, quite a bit actually, above 100,000. So it has cooled down a bit. Okay, what about the equities going into tomorrow? You've got the Dow up 78 or 0.17. You've got the S&P up 9.5 or 0.16%. And you have got the NASDAQ also up 0.16%, which is 35.25. So overall, you've got the equities looking like they want to continue the run tomorrow. It would not shock me if they didn't after this big day today. But we'll see what happens. You've got some housing numbers coming in tomorrow, which might be interesting to add on to what we just got. So I think that's all I've got for you today, except that remember, I got Brian Wang on later tonight, 7:45, and we will talk about Tesla. We'll talk about actually the charting. How's the charting looking with this big run up? What has that done to the charts? What does it mean coming the next couple of weeks with regard to the folks who look at it that way? We'll talk about the fundamentals too, but then we will spend most of the hour that we produced talking about the fire situation, the fire, and believe me, it's interesting. If you love science, if you love technology, if you love solving problems, come along with us. I think you'll like this, even if you live far from the fires. Also, what else have I got? Oh yeah, I think that's it for today. Yeah, last night was Brian White. I'll put a card for that. There's always one last thing I've forgotten to talk about, and then there would be something like Patreon. You could drop a nickel in the Patreon. I have my little thing. I'm extending it out. Anyway, that's all I got for you right now. It's been great talking to you.